There was a moment in your life. Maybe it was yesterday. Maybe it was last year. Maybe it's happening right now as you're listening to these words. A moment when you were so close to giving up, so close to quitting on something that mattered to you, so close to walking away from a dream or a goal or a challenge that once meant everything. In that moment, your body was exhausted. Your mind was filled with doubt. Your heart was heavy with disappointment. And a voice inside your head, a voice that sounded so reasonable, so logical, so compassionate, whispered to you, "It's okay to stop now. You've tried hard enough. You've done your best. No one can blame you for quitting." Sometimes knowing when to give up is a sign of wisdom, not weakness. And maybe you listened to that voice. Maybe you gave up. Maybe you're living right now with the quiet regret of wondering what could have been if you had just pushed through. Or maybe you're still in that moment, still standing at that crossroads between perseverance and surrender, still trying to decide whether to take one more step or to finally let yourself stop. If that's you, if you're struggling right now with the temptation to quit, if you're wondering whether you have what it takes to keep going, then what you're about to hear could change everything. Could be the difference between the life you're currently living and the life you're capable of creating. Could be the thing that transforms you from someone who gives up when things get hard into someone who becomes stronger because things got hard. This is not just another motivational message that will make you feel good for 5 minutes and then fade away. This is not some collection of empty platitudes about believing in yourself and thinking positive thoughts. What you're about to discover is the truth about mental strength, the real science and psychology behind why some people push through when others quit, why some people achieve extraordinary things while others with equal or greater talent fall short, why some people seem unbreakable while others shatter at the first sign of difficulty. And here's what's most important for you to understand right now, before we go any further. That unbreakable strength, that ability to never give up, that resilience that seems almost superhuman in the people you admire. It's not something they were born with and you weren't. It's not some genetic gift or personality trait that you either have or don't have. It's a skill, a trainable skill, something you can develop and strengthen through specific practices and mindset shifts, which means that no matter how many times you've quit in the past, no matter how weak or fragile you feel right now, no matter how many people have told you that you just don't have what it takes, you can change. You can become someone who never gives up, starting today, starting with the choice you make in the next moment you want to quit. The human mind is the most powerful tool you'll ever possess, more powerful than any technology or weapon or resource. But for most people, their mind works against them instead of for them. It creates limits instead of breaking through them. It generates excuses instead of finding solutions. It quits before the body does. It surrenders before the battle is truly lost. But what if you could train your mind differently? What if you could reprogram the mental patterns that make you want to quit and replace them with patterns that drive you forward? What if the next time life got hard, instead of your mind looking for escape routes, it started looking for pathways through the difficulty? What if instead of hearing, "I can't do this," you heard, "I don't quit, I finish"? That transformation is not only possible, it's inevitable if you understand and apply the principles you're about to learn. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is facing a challenge similar to yours, maybe even harder than yours, and they're making a choice to take one more step even though they're exhausted, to try one more time even though they've already failed a dozen times, to keep going even though every logical reason supports quitting. And that choice, that single decision to not give up when giving up will be so easy and so justified, that's the choice that's going to change their entire life. That's the moment when they're becoming someone different, someone stronger, someone who will look back years from now and realize that everything good that came afterward, all the success and achievement and growth and confidence, it all started in that moment when they chose not to quit. And you're at that same moment right now. You're standing at the same crossroads. You have the same choice. And what you decide in the coming minutes and hours and days will determine which path your life takes, will determine whether you become someone who gave up or someone who pushed through, will determine whether this challenge breaks you or makes you. So before you make that decision, before you choose whether to quit or to keep going, give yourself the gift of understanding what's really happening in your mind when you want to give up. Learn the truth about where mental strength comes from and how to build it. Discover the specific strategies that will help you push through when everything in you wants to stop. Because here's what nobody tells you. Here's the secret that successful people know, but struggling people don't. Your mind is lying to you about your limits. Your body is capable of far more than your mind believes. And the wall you think you've hit, the point where you think you absolutely cannot continue, that's not your limit. That's just your comfort zone creating a false boundary. And on the other side of that boundary, just beyond the point where your mind tells you to quit, that's where everything you want is waiting for you. That's where growth happens. That's where you discover what you're truly capable of achieving. In the next hour, as you listen to these 10 powerful principles, you're going to learn exactly why your mind wants to quit before your body needs to, why pain is temporary but regret lasts forever, why discipline beats motivation every single time, how your inner voice is secretly controlling your future, why your comfort zone is the enemy of your growth, how to reframe failure as fuel instead of defeat, how to focus only on what you can control and ignore everything else, how small daily wins build unbreakable confidence, how hard times create a stronger identity instead of breaking you, and most importantly, how never giving up is not a talent you're born with but a skill you can train, starting right now with your very next choice. These are not theoretical concepts or nice ideas. These are battle-tested principles that have helped ordinary people achieve extraordinary things, that have transformed weak minds into strong ones, that have taken people from the edge of quitting to the heights of achievement. And they will work for you too if you let them. If you open your mind to the possibility that you're capable of more than you currently believe, if you're willing to see your struggles not as evidence that you should quit, but as opportunities to train yourself to become someone who never quits. So here's what I'm asking you to do right now. Make a commitment to yourself, a commitment to listen to these 10 principles with an open mind, a commitment to really absorb them and think about how they apply to your life. And most importantly, a commitment to apply at least one of them the next time you want to quit, the next time that voice in your head tells you it's okay to stop, the next time giving up feels justified. Just try one principle. Just make one different choice. Just push through one time when you would normally quit. And see what happens. See how it feels. See how it changes you. Because that's all it takes to start the transformation. That's how you begin training your mind to never give up. Not through some massive dramatic change, but through one small choice to keep going when you could stop, and then another choice, and then another, until choosing to persevere becomes who you are, until not quitting is simply what you do, until you build an unbreakable mind that can withstand any challenge and push through any obstacle. The person you're capable of becoming, the person with that kind of mental strength, that person is already inside you, waiting to emerge, waiting for you to stop listening to the voice that says you're not strong enough and start listening to the truth that you can become as strong as you need to be through training, through practice, through repeatedly choosing not to quit even when quitting feels justified. And years from now, when you've achieved things you currently think are impossible, when you become someone you currently can't imagine being, when people look at you and wonder how you develop such incredible mental strength, you'll remember this moment, this choice point, this day when you decided to stop giving up and start training yourself to never quit, and you'll realize that everything changed not because you suddenly became a different person, but because you learned the truth, that resilience is not talent, it's training. And you committed to doing that training one choice at a time, one challenge at a time, one moment of not quitting at a time. So let's begin. Let's dive into these 10 principles that will transform your mind from something that quits easily into something that never gives up. Let's discover together how to train your mind to become unbreakable. Because the challenge you're facing right now, the thing that's making you want to quit, that's not the end of your story. That's just the beginning of your transformation, if you choose to let it be. Your mind quits before your body. Your body is capable of so much more than you think it is. But here's the truth that most people never realize until it's too late. Your mind gives up long before your body actually does. Think about the last time you wanted to quit something. Maybe it was a workout. Maybe it was a difficult project at work. Maybe it was a goal you set for yourself months ago that now feels impossible. In that moment when you decided to stop, was your body truly at its limit? Or was it your mind that started whispering to you, telling you that you've done enough, that it's okay to stop now, that you deserve a break? Most of the time, if we're being honest with ourselves, our bodies still have energy left in the tank. Our muscles can still push a little further. Our hearts can still beat a little faster. But it's our mind that creates this wall, this invisible barrier that feels so real in the moment. Your mind is incredibly powerful. But sometimes that power works against you instead of for you. It generates fear out of thin air, making you scared of failure before you've even failed. making you worried about what other people will think, making you anxious about pain that hasn't even happened yet. It plants seeds of doubt that grow like weeds in your consciousness, telling you that you're not good enough, that other people are better, that you don't have what it takes, that success is for other people but not for you. And perhaps most destructively, your mind becomes a master excuse maker, crafting perfectly reasonable-sounding reasons why you should stop, why you should give up, why you should choose the easier path. I'm too tired, it says, even when you barely started. I don't have time, it whispers, even though you spent an hour scrolling through your phone. This isn't the right moment, it argues, as if there will ever be a perfect moment that arrives with a guarantee of success. Maybe I'm just not built for this, it concludes, giving you permission to quit while protecting your ego. Scientists have studied this phenomenon, and what they found is fascinating. When people think they've reached their physical limit, when they believe they absolutely cannot continue, tests show that their bodies are often operating at only 60 or 70% of their actual capacity. That means there's still 30 or 40% left, but the mind has already decided the race is over. The workout is done. The effort is complete. This mental barrier exists for a reason. Of course, your brain is designed to protect you, to keep you safe, to conserve energy, to avoid unnecessary risk. Thousands of years ago, this protective mechanism helped our ancestors survive by preventing them from exhausting themselves when a predator might be nearby or when food was scarce. But in today's world, this same mechanism that once kept us alive now keeps us small, keeps us comfortable, keeps us from reaching our true potential. The mind sees challenge and interprets it as danger. It feels discomfort and treats it as a warning signal. It encounters difficulty and immediately starts looking for the exit. But here's what changes everything. When you understand that this mental wall is not reality, but rather a protective mechanism, a false alarm system that's trying to keep you safe and comfortable, you can start to train your mind differently. You can learn to recognize that voice of doubt for what it really is, not truth but fear, not wisdom but weakness disguised as reason. Training your mind means developing the ability to push past that wall, to keep moving when every thought in your head is screaming at you to stop, to take one more step when your mind has already told you that you've taken your last one. It means building a relationship with discomfort where you no longer treat it as a stop sign, but as a sign that you're growing, that you're expanding your limits, that you're becoming stronger. Think about a runner training for a marathon. In the beginning, their mind tells them to stop after just a mile or two. The discomfort feels unbearable. The voice in their head is loud and convincing. Every part of them wants to walk, to slow down, to quit. But if they keep training, if they consistently push past that mental wall, something incredible happens. That wall doesn't disappear, but it moves. What once felt impossible at 2 miles now feels manageable. The mind learns that the discomfort isn't dangerous, that pushing through leads to growth rather than harm, that the voice of doubt isn't always right. And eventually, that same runner crosses a finish line they once thought was beyond their reach, not because their body suddenly became superhuman, but because their mind learned to get out of the way. The greatest athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, and achievers in history all face the same mental walls that you face. They heard the same voice of doubt. They felt the same fear. They experienced the same urge to quit. But what made them different wasn't their bodies. It wasn't some genetic gift or special talent that you don't have. It was their trained mind, their ability to recognize when their mind was lying to them and keep going anyway. They understood that the mind quits first, and they made a conscious decision not to listen. They treated that mental barrier like a challenge to overcome rather than a truth to obey. They built mental toughness the same way you build physical strength, through repetition, through practice, through consistently choosing to push when their mind was begging them to stop. When you train your mind to push past that mental wall, something remarkable happens. You discover reserves of strength you never knew existed. You accomplish things you thought were impossible. You surprise yourself with what you're capable of achieving. And most importantly, you build a new identity. You stop being someone whose mind controls them and become someone who controls their mind. You transform from a person who quits when things get hard into a person who keeps going when others stop. You evolve from someone whose mind creates limits into someone whose mind creates possibilities. This is not about ignoring your body's real signals or pushing yourself into injury or burnout. This is about recognizing the difference between your body's genuine limits and your mind's imaginary ones. This is about understanding that most of the time, when you think you can't, you actually can. Most of the time, when you want to quit, you're not really at the end. You're just at the edge of your comfort zone, and that's exactly where growth begins. So the next time you feel that urge to quit, that voice telling you to stop, that mental wall rising up in front of you, pause for a moment and ask yourself honestly, is my body truly done? Or is it just my mind trying to protect me from discomfort? And then make a choice, a conscious, deliberate choice to take one more step, to push a little further, to prove to yourself that your mind doesn't have to be the boss of you. Because every time you push past that mental wall, you're not just accomplishing whatever task is in front of you, you're rewiring your brain. You're training your mind to be your greatest ally instead of your biggest obstacle, and you're becoming the kind of person who never gives up no matter what. Pain is temporary. Regret is permanent. There's a moment that comes to all of us, a moment when we're faced with a choice between pushing through something difficult or simply walking away. And in that moment, quitting always feels like the easier option, the smarter option, the option that will bring immediate relief. Your muscles are burning. Your mind is exhausted. Your spirit feels depleted. And there's a voice inside you that says, just stop. You've done enough. You can try again another day. It's okay to give up this time. And when you listen to that voice, when you finally let yourself quit, there's this wave of relief that washes over you. The pain stops, the pressure disappears, the discomfort fades away. And for a brief moment, it feels like you made the right decision. You feel lighter, freer, like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. But here's what nobody tells you about that moment of relief. Here's the truth that only reveals itself later, sometimes days later, sometimes years later. That relief is temporary, but the regret that follows is permanent. That pain you were feeling, whether it was physical exhaustion, mental struggle, emotional discomfort, or the fear of failure, that pain was always going to be temporary. It was going to end whether you pushed through or gave up. If you had kept going, the pain would have eventually subsided, your body would have recovered, your mind would have rested, and you would have crossed the finish line. But regret doesn't work that way. Regret doesn't fade with time like pain does. In fact, regret often grows stronger as time passes. It starts as a small whisper in the back of your mind. I wish I had kept going. I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't quit. And that whisper becomes louder and more persistent. Years from now, you won't remember how tired you felt in that moment. You won't remember the specific ache in your muscles or the specific worry in your mind. But you will remember that you gave up. You will remember that you quit. And you will wonder who you could have become if you had just pushed through. Think about the people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who look back on their lives with deep regret. They don't regret the things that hurt temporarily. They don't wish they had avoided hard workouts or difficult conversations or challenging projects. What they regret are the dreams they abandoned, the goals they gave up on, the potential they never explored because in a moment of discomfort, they chose relief over resilience. They regret the business they never started because the first year looked too hard. They regret the relationship they never fought for because the conflict felt too painful. They regret the skill they never mastered because the learning process felt too frustrating. They regret the body they never built because the discipline felt too demanding. And the cruel irony is that the pain they were trying to avoid by quitting was nothing compared to the pain of living with regret for decades. This is one of the most important lessons you can ever learn. Short-term discomfort is the price of long-term success, and short-term comfort is the price of long-term regret. Everything worth achieving in life requires you to go through a period of difficulty, a period where it hurts, where it's hard, we want to quit, and that period is not optional. It's not something you can skip or avoid. It's the toll you pay to get to the destination you want. If you want to be healthy and fit, you have to endure the discomfort of exercise and the discipline of eating well. If you want to build a successful career, you have to endure years of learning, failing, and working when you don't feel like it. If you want deep relationships, you have to endure the vulnerability, the difficult conversations, the risk of rejection. If you want financial freedom, you have to endure the sacrifice, the delayed gratification, the periods of uncertainty. There is no path to anything meaningful that doesn't involve temporary pain. But here's the beautiful truth that makes it all worthwhile. That pain is temporary. The exhaustion you feel today will be gone tomorrow. The fear you feel this week will fade next month. The struggle you experience this year will become a distant memory next year. Pain has an expiration date. It cannot last forever. Your body heals, your mind adapts, your emotions settle, and what once felt unbearable becomes a story you tell about how strong you became. But regret has no expiration date. Regret is the ghost that haunts you at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. It's the ache you feel when you see someone else accomplishing the goal you gave up on. It's the hollow feeling you get when you realize you're not living the life you could have lived because in moments of temporary discomfort, you consistently chose the easy way out. And the worst part about regret is that it compounds over time. One quit leads to another. One surrender makes the next one easier. And before you know it, giving up has become your default response to difficulty, and you're living a small, comfortable, safe life that feels nothing like the life you once dreamed of living. So when you're in that moment, that difficult moment when quitting feels so tempting, when the pain feels so real, and the relief of giving up seems so appealing, you have to train yourself to think beyond that moment. You have to develop the ability to fast forward your life and ask yourself honestly, which will I regret more, pushing through this temporary discomfort or living with the permanent knowledge that I gave up when things got hard? Imagine yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, at the end of your life looking back. Will you be grateful that you chose comfort in that moment, or will you wish desperately that you had found the strength to keep going? The answer is almost always clear when you think about it from that perspective. Nobody on their deathbed says, I wish I had quit more often. I wish I had given up on more of my dreams. I wish I had chosen comfort over growth. But countless people do say, I wish I had tried harder. I wish I had been braver. I wish I had pushed through when it was difficult instead of giving up. This is why remembering future regret is such a powerful tool for keeping yourself moving forward. When your mind is screaming at you to quit, when your body is begging for relief, when the easy path looks so much more appealing than the hard one, pause and think about future you, the person you will become if you quit versus the person you will become if you persist. Think about the pride and strength and confidence you will feel if you push through versus the disappointment and shame and regret you will feel if you give up. Use that vision of future regret as fuel, as motivation, as a reason to take one more step even when you don't think you can. And here's something else to remember. Some of the most successful people in the world, some of the people we admire most, achieve what they achieved not because they were more talented or more lucky, but because they had this deep understanding that pain is temporary, but regret is permanent. They endured the temporary discomfort because they knew the alternative was worse. They pushed through the hard years of building a business because they knew the regret of not trying would haunt them forever. They trained through the exhaustion and injury because they knew quitting would hurt more than any physical pain ever could. They had difficult conversations and took risks and faced rejection because they understood that the sting of failure fades, but the sting of what if never does. When you truly internalize this truth, when you really understand in your bones that the pain you're feeling right now is temporary, but the regret of giving up is permanent, it changes how you approach every challenge in your life. You stop seeing discomfort as something to avoid at all costs and start seeing it as the necessary price of becoming who you want to be. You stop looking for the easy way out and start embracing the hard way as the only way that leads somewhere worth going. You develop a mental toughness that says, this hurts right now, but I know it won't hurt forever, and I would rather hurt temporarily than regret permanently. So the next time you're tempted to quit, the next time giving up feels like the most attractive option in the world, remember this truth that has been proven over and over throughout human history. Pain is temporary, but regret is permanent. The discomfort you feel today will fade, but the decision you make today will echo through the rest of your life. Choose wisely. Choose to push through. Choose to endure the temporary pain so you can avoid the permanent regret. Because years from now, you won't regret the pain you endured, but you will absolutely regret the dreams you abandoned when they got difficult. Discipline beats motivation every time. Let's talk about motivation for a moment, because motivation is what most people rely on when they're trying to achieve something meaningful in their lives. Motivation is that feeling you get when you watch an inspiring video, when you read a powerful quote, when you listen to someone's success story, when you wake up on New Year's Day ready to change your entire life. It's that surge of energy that makes you feel invincible, that makes you believe you can do anything, that fills you with excitement and determination, and the absolute certainty that this time will be different. This time you're really going to follow through. This time you're going to achieve your goals. And motivation is a beautiful thing. It really is. It gets you started. It helps you take that first step. It gives you the initial push you need to begin your journey. But here's the problem with motivation. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Motivation is unreliable. Motivation is temporary. Motivation is a feeling. And feelings come and go like the weather. One day you're motivated. You're fired up. You're ready to conquer the world. And the next day you wake up and that feeling is completely gone, replaced by tiredness or doubt or distraction or just plain indifference. You don't feel like working out anymore. You don't feel like working on your business. You don't feel like studying. You don't feel like doing the hard thing you committed to doing. And when you rely on motivation to drive your actions, when you only do things when you feel motivated to do them, you end up with inconsistent results. You end up starting strong and fading fast. You end up being one of those people who has a garage full of unused exercise equipment and a computer full of unfinished projects and a life full of abandoned dreams. This is where discipline comes in. And this is where everything changes for people who actually achieve their goals versus people who just talk about them. Discipline is completely different from motivation. Motivation is a feeling, but discipline is a decision. Motivation is something that happens to you based on external circumstances or internal emotions. But discipline is something you create through choice and commitment and repetition. Motivation says, I feel like doing this right now. But discipline says, I'm doing this whether I feel like it or not. Motivation gets you excited about the destination. But discipline is what actually gets you there, step by step, day by day, even on the days when the excitement is worn off and the journey feels boring or difficult or pointless. Think about the most successful people you know, the people who have actually achieved significant things in their lives, the people who have built strong bodies or successful businesses or meaningful relationships or impressive skills. If you look closely at their lives, you'll notice something interesting. They don't rely on motivation at all. They have systems, they have routines, they have habits that they follow consistently regardless of how they feel. The successful entrepreneur doesn't wait until she feels motivated to work on her business. She has specific hours every day when she works, and she shows up during those hours whether she's excited about it or not. The person with the incredible physique doesn't wait until he feels motivated to go to the gym. He goes at the same time every day, because that's what he does. It's who he is. It's a non-negotiable part of his daily routine. The writer who actually finishes books doesn't wait for inspiration to strike. She sits down at her desk at the same time every morning and writes whether the words are flowing easily or not. These people have learned the secret that separates achievers from dreamers. Success doesn't need motivation. Success needs consistent action, and consistent action requires discipline. Discipline is what allows you to do the right thing, even when every part of you wants to do something else. It's what gets you out of bed early when your body is begging for more sleep. It's what makes you choose the healthy meal when the junk food is calling your name. It's what keeps you working when Netflix is tempting you. It's what makes you practice your skill when you'd rather scroll through social media. It's what pushes you to have the difficult conversation when avoiding it would be easier. Discipline is the bridge between your goals and your accomplishments. And unlike motivation, discipline doesn't abandon you when things get hard. Here's how discipline actually works in real life and why it's so much more powerful than motivation. When you build discipline, you're not building it around feelings. You're building it around habits and systems that function independently of how you feel. You create a morning routine and you follow it every single day, not because you always feel like it, but because it's simply what you do. You schedule your important tasks, and you complete them at the scheduled time, not because you're always excited about them, but because you've made a commitment to yourself that you refuse to break. You establish rules for yourself. Simple rules like, I exercise every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday no matter what, or I work on my business for 2 hours every morning before checking email, or I read for 30 minutes before bed every night. And then you follow those rules with the same consistency that you follow the rule about stopping at red lights. You don't debate with yourself about whether you feel like stopping at a red light. You just stop because that's the rule. And when you treat your personal commitments with the same seriousness, when you make them non-negotiable rather than suggestions that depend on your mood, that's when discipline starts to change your life. And here's the beautiful thing about discipline that most people don't realize until they experience it themselves. The more you practice discipline, the easier it becomes, and the less you need motivation at all. In the beginning, discipline is hard. It feels like you're constantly fighting against yourself, constantly forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do, constantly relying on willpower to overcome your desires for comfort and ease. But if you stick with it, if you keep showing up even when you don't feel like it, something incredible happens. The habits you're building through discipline start to become automatic. Your brain creates new neural pathways that make the disciplined action the default rather than the exception. What once required tremendous effort starts to require very little effort at all. The early morning workout that used to feel like torture becomes just what you do, no different from brushing your teeth. The daily work session that used to require forcing yourself to focus becomes a natural part of your day that you actually miss when you skip it. And the most amazing part is that as discipline becomes easier and more automatic, you start to generate a different kind of motivation. Not the fleeting emotional motivation that comes and goes, but a deeper, more sustainable motivation that comes from seeing results, from proving to yourself that you can do hard things, from building self-respect and confidence through consistent action. This new motivation doesn't depend on inspiration or excitement or feeling good. It comes from the evidence you've created in your own life that discipline works, that you are capable, that you are the kind of person who follows through. Think about it this way. Motivation is like trying to drive across the country, using only the fuel you start with in your tank. You might get pretty far when the tank is full, when you're feeling excited and energized and ready to go. But eventually that fuel runs out. And if you haven't developed the discipline to stop and refuel regularly, to keep moving even when the initial excitement has faded, you're going to end up stranded on the side of the road with an empty tank, wondering why you never made it to your destination. Discipline, on the other hand, is like having a system for refueling regularly, for maintaining your vehicle, for making steady progress even when the journey stops being exciting and starts being just plain work. Discipline gets you to your destination not because it makes the journey easy or fun or constantly exciting, but because it keeps you moving forward regardless of how the journey feels. The book emphasizes building daily habits that work even when you don't feel inspired, and this is absolutely critical to understand. Your daily habits, the small actions you take every single day, are far more important than the occasional big efforts you make when you're feeling motivated. If you exercise intensely for a week when you're motivated and then don't exercise at all for 3 months when the motivation fades, you won't see results. But if you exercise moderately for just 20 minutes every single day because you built the discipline to make it a non-negotiable habit, you will transform your body and your health. If you work on your business for 12 hours straight when you're feeling inspired and then ignore for weeks when you're not, you won't build a successful business. But if you work on it for just 1 or 2 focused hours every single day because you've disciplined yourself to show up consistently, you will build something significant. This is the power of discipline over motivation. This is why discipline beats motivation every single time. Motivation might help you have a great day or a great week, but discipline is what gives you a great year, a great decade, a great life. Motivation is the spark that starts a fire, but discipline is a consistent effort that keeps the fire burning long after the initial spark has faded. So if you want to achieve something meaningful, if you want to build something lasting, if you want to become someone you're proud of, you need to stop waiting for motivation and start building discipline. You need to create systems and routines that will work even on your worst days, even when you're tired, even when you're discouraged, even when you don't feel like it at all. You need to make commitments to yourself and then honor those commitments with the same seriousness you would honor commitments to other people. You need to understand that the feeling of wanting to do something is not a prerequisite for actually doing it, that you can take action even when you don't feel like it, that discipline is simply the practice of doing what you said you would do when you said you would do it, regardless of how you feel about it in the moment. And when you master this, when you build discipline into the foundation of your life, you stop being at the mercy of your emotions and your circumstances. You stop needing perfect conditions or perfect feelings to make progress. You become someone who gets things done, someone who follows through, someone who achieves their goals not through bursts of motivated action, but through steady, consistent, disciplined effort that compounds over time into extraordinary results. Because at the end of the day, Motivation is a visitor that comes and goes as it pleases. But discipline is a skill you build and a choice you make. And it's the most important choice you'll ever make if you truly want to succeed at anything that matters. Your inner voice decides your future. Right now, as you're listening to these words, there's another voice speaking in your mind, a constant stream of thoughts and commentary that runs in the background of your consciousness every single moment of every single day. And this voice, this inner voice that only you can hear, is quietly shaping your entire life in ways you probably don't even realize. Most people go through their whole lives without ever really paying attention to this voice, without ever stopping to listen to what they're actually saying to themselves. And that's a tragedy, because the way you talk to yourself matters more than you think, more than almost anything else in determining who you become and what you achieve. This inner voice is like a narrator of your life, constantly interpreting everything that happens to you, making judgment about who you are and what you're capable of, predicting your future, explaining your past, and guiding your present actions. And here's the crucial thing you need to understand. Your brain believes what you tell it. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between truth and lies. It simply accepts what you repeatedly tell yourself as fact and then works to make that story come true. If your inner voice constantly says, "I can't do this," if it tells you, "I'm not smart enough," or "I always fail," or "nothing ever works out for me," or "I'm not the kind of person who succeeds at things," then guess what happens? Your actions follow your thoughts. Your behavior aligns with your beliefs. You unconsciously sabotage yourself to prove your inner voice right. You don't try as hard because you've already decided it won't work. You give up more easily because you've already told yourself you're someone who fails. You avoid opportunities because you've already determined you're not capable. You live down to your own expectations. And then you point to your results as proof that your negative inner voice was telling the truth all along, never realizing that it was the voice itself that created those results in the first place. Think about how powerful this is. Think about how your inner dialogue literally shapes your reality. When you wake up in the morning and your inner voice says, "I'm so tired. I can't do this today. This is going to be a terrible day." What happens? You move slower. You feel more exhausted than you actually are. You approach everything with negative attitude. And sure enough, you end up having a terrible day, not because the day itself was terrible, but because you programmed yourself to experience it that way. But if you wake up and your inner voice says, "I'm ready, I can handle whatever comes today, I'm going to make this a good day," you move differently. You carry yourself differently. You approach challenges with confidence instead of dread, and you end up having a completely different experience. Not because external circumstances change, but because your internal narrative changed. Your inner voice is either your greatest ally or your worst enemy. And for most people, unfortunately, it's an enemy they don't even know they're fighting. Most people's inner voice is harsh, critical, doubtful, fearful, and relentlessly negative in ways they would never accept from another person. If someone followed you around all day saying the things your inner voice says to you, telling you that you're not good enough, that you're going to fail, that you should be afraid, that you don't have what it takes, you would think that person was cruel and abusive, and you would remove them from your life immediately. But when that voice comes from inside your own head, you accept it as truth. You don't question it. You don't challenge it. You just believe it and let it guide your life. The book teaches something absolutely transformative. You can change this voice. You can replace negative self-talk with strong, confident internal commands. And when you do, you literally change the trajectory of your entire future. This isn't positive thinking nonsense. This isn't about pretending everything is perfect or lying to yourself about reality. This is about taking control of the narrative in your own mind and deliberately choosing thoughts that empower you instead of thoughts that diminish you. It's about recognizing when your inner voice is being destructive and consciously replacing those destructive thoughts with constructive ones. It's about training yourself to speak to yourself the way a coach would speak to an athlete they believe in, the way a mentor would speak to a protege they're investing in, the way a loving parent would speak to a child they're encouraging. When you catch yourself thinking, "I can't do this," you pause and deliberately replace it with, "I can figure this out," or "I'm learning how to do this," or "This is hard, but I'm capable of hard things." When your inner voice says, "I always mess up," you interrupt that thought and say, "I've made mistakes before and I learn from them, and I'm getting better every day." When the voice whispers, "I'm not good enough," you speak back with conviction and say, "I am enough. I am worthy. I am capable of growth and improvement." This might feel awkward at first. It might feel fake or forced. You might not believe these new thoughts when you first start saying them. But here's what happens when you persist. Your brain starts to rewire itself. Neuroscience shows us that thoughts create neural pathways. And the thoughts you think most often create the strongest pathways, like trails that get worn into ground from being walked on repeatedly. When you spent years thinking negative thoughts about yourself, those neural pathways are deep and well-worn. Your brain defaults to them automatically. But when you start deliberately thinking different thoughts, when you consciously replace the negative with a positive, you begin creating new neural pathways. And over time, with enough repetition, these new pathways become the default, the new automatic response. Your inner voice actually changes, not because you're pretending or being fake, but because you're literally reshaping the physical structure of your brain to the thoughts you choose to think. And as your inner voice changes, everything else changes with it. You start taking different actions because you believe different things about yourself. You pursue opportunities you would have previously avoided because you've told yourself you're capable instead of telling yourself you'll fail. You persist through difficulties you would have previously quit because your inner voice says, I can handle this, instead of, this is too hard for me. You carry yourself with more confidence because the voice in your head is building you up instead of tearing you down. And other people notice this change in you even though they can't hear your thoughts, because the way you talk to yourself on the inside eventually shows up in how you present yourself on the outside. Consider the person who's trying to lose weight and get healthy. If their inner voice constantly says, I have no willpower, I always give in to temptation, I'm just not disciplined enough, then what happens when they're faced with a choice between a healthy meal and junk food? Their inner voice has already told them who they are, someone without willpower, someone who gives in, someone who isn't disciplined, and their actions follow that identity. They choose the junk food, not because they consciously wanted to sabotage themselves, but because they were simply acting in alignment with what their inner voice told them about who they are. But if that same person changes their inner voice, if they start saying, I am someone who takes care of my body, I am someone who makes healthy choices, I have the discipline to do what's right for me, then when they face that same choice, they're operating from a completely different identity. And the healthy choice becomes natural, becomes the obvious choice, becomes who they are. Your inner voice doesn't just predict your future. It creates your future by shaping your identity. And your actions always eventually align with your identity. This is why changing your self-talk is one of the most powerful things you can possibly do. You're not just changing words in your head. You're changing who you believe you are. And when you change who you believe you are, you change what you're capable of becoming. The book teaches specific techniques for replacing negative self-talk with strong, confident internal commands. And these aren't just feel-good affirmations. These are practical tools for reprogramming your mind. One powerful technique is to catch yourself in the moment when negative self-talk appears and immediately challenge it. When your inner voice says, I can't, you ask yourself, is that actually true, or is that just fear talking? Usually it's just fear. Usually you actually can do the thing. You're just scared, and recognizing that distinction gives you power. Another technique is to speak to yourself in the second person, using you instead of I, because research shows this creates psychological distance and makes your self-talk more effective. Instead of saying, I've got this, you say, you've got this, and somehow that simple shift makes the encouragement more powerful, more believable. You can also use strong, commanding language instead of weak, tentative language. Instead of, I hope I can do this, or I'll try my best, you say, I will do this, or I am doing this. The certainty in your language creates certainty in your mind. And perhaps most importantly, you can develop a habit of positive self-reinforcement, where you actively acknowledge and celebrate your wins, even small ones, building evidence in your own mind that you are capable, that you do follow through, that you are the kind of person who succeeds. Every time you do something you said you would do, your inner voice can say, see, you did it. You're someone who keeps their word. And that reinforcement builds momentum and confidence. The truth is, you're going to have an inner voice whether you take control of it or not. The question is whether that voice is going to work for you or against you, whether it's going to be a source of strength or a source of limitation, whether it's going to push you toward your potential or hold you back from it. And the beautiful thing is that this is entirely within your control. You can't control what happens to you in life. You can't control what other people say about you. You can't control external circumstances, but you can absolutely control what you say to yourself about all of those things. You can control the narrative in your own mind. You can decide what story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. When you truly understand this, when you realize that your inner voice is not some fixed, unchangeable aspect of who you are, but rather a habit that you can reshape through conscious effort and practice, it's incredibly empowering. You are not stuck with the negative, critical, fearful voice that's been running in your head for years. You can change it, starting right now, starting with the very next thought you think. You can become your own biggest supporter instead of your own biggest critic. You can program yourself for success instead of failure, for confidence instead of doubt, for action instead of hesitation. And when you make this shift, when you take control of your inner dialogue and deliberately choose empowering thoughts over limiting ones, you're not just changing your mind, you're changing your entire future. Because the way you talk to yourself today determines the actions you take tomorrow, and the actions you take tomorrow determine who you become and what you achieve in the weeks and months and years ahead. Your inner voice decides your future, so make sure it's saying things that lead to the future you actually want to live. Comfort zone is the enemy of growth. There's a place where most people spend the majority of their lives, a place that feels safe and familiar and easy, a place where you know exactly what to expect, and nothing ever really challenges you or scares you or pushes you beyond what you already know you can handle. And this place is called your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is made up of all the routines and habits and relationships and activities that feel effortless to you. The things you can do on autopilot without really thinking or trying. The situations where you feel completely in control and completely safe. And there's nothing inherently wrong with comfort. There's nothing wrong with having parts of your life that feel easy and relaxed and stress-free. In fact, everyone needs some comfort in their life. Everyone needs a place where they can rest and recharge and feel at peace. But here's the problem. Here's the trap that most people fall into without even realizing it. When you spend all your time in your comfort zone, when you make every decision based on what feels comfortable and safe and easy, you stop growing. You stop developing new skills. You stop expanding your capabilities. You stop discovering what you're truly capable of achieving. Growth never happens where comfort lives. And if you want to become more than you currently are, if you want to achieve more than you've currently achieved, if you want to experience more than you've currently experienced, you have to be willing to step outside of that comfortable place and into the territory that feels uncertain and challenging and, yes, uncomfortable. Think about how growth actually works in any area of life, and you'll see this principle everywhere. When you work out at the gym, your muscles don't grow when you're lifting weights that feel comfortable and easy. They grow when you push them beyond their current capacity. When you lift weight that's heavy enough to create micro tears in the muscle fiber. When you work to the point of discomfort and even pain. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It's a sign that growth is happening, that your body is being challenged in ways that will force it to adapt and become stronger. The same principle applies to your mind and your skills and your entire life. You don't learn and grow when you're doing things you already know how to do. You learn and grow when you attempt things that are just beyond your current abilities. When you put yourself in situations that challenge you and stretch you and force you to develop new capabilities. But most people, when faced with a choice between comfort and growth, between staying in familiar territory or venturing into the unknown, they choose comfort almost every single time. They choose the job that feels safe over the opportunity that feels risky. They choose a relationship that's comfortable over the vulnerability of pursuing something deeper. They choose a familiar routine over trying something new. They choose staying where they are over going where they want to be. And they make this choice not once, but hundreds of times, thousands of times. Every single day in small ways and big ways. And each time they choose comfort, they're training their mind, they're reinforcing a pattern. They're teaching themselves that comfort is more important than growth, that safety is more valuable than possibility, that avoiding discomfort is a primary goal of life. And here's what the book explains so clearly. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you're not just missing an opportunity to grow, you're actually training your mind to quit. You're strengthening the neural pathways that make quitting easier and persisting harder. Your brain learns that when things get uncomfortable, the solution is to retreat back to what feels safe. It learns that discomfort is something to avoid rather than something to embrace. It learns that the feelings of uncertainty and fear and challenge are signals to turn back rather than signals that you're on the edge of growth. And the more often you make this choice, the more often you prioritize comfort over challenge, the stronger this pattern becomes, until eventually your comfort zone becomes a prison, a small, safe, familiar prison that you build around yourself one comfortable choice at a time. You wake up one day and realize that your life has become so small, so predictable, so limited, not because you lacked opportunity or ability, but because you spent years choosing comfort, years avoiding anything that felt difficult or uncertain or scary, years training your mind to quit whenever things got challenging. But here's the beautiful and empowering truth that changes everything. You can make a different choice, and when you do, when you deliberately choose discomfort over comfort, when you intentionally step outside your comfort zone and into situations that challenge you, something remarkable happens to your mind. It becomes tougher, more resilient, more capable. Every time you choose to do something that scares you, something that feels hard, something that pushes you beyond your current limits, you're not just accomplishing that specific thing. You're rewiring your brain. You're teaching yourself that discomfort is survivable, that challenges can be overcome, that you're capable of more than you thought. You're building what psychologists call stress inoculation, where exposure to manageable levels of stress and discomfort actually makes you more resistant to stress in the future, stronger, more adaptable, more confident in your ability to handle whatever life throws at you. Think about someone who's terrified of public speaking. Someone whose comfort zone definitely does not include standing in front of a crowd and presenting. The first time they force themselves to do it anyway, to step outside that comfort zone despite the fear, is incredibly uncomfortable. Their heart races, their hands shake, their voice trembles. Every part of them wants to run away and retreat back to safety. But if they push through that discomfort, if they complete the presentation despite the fear, something shifts in their mind. They've proven to themselves that they can survive this uncomfortable situation, that the fear didn't destroy them, that they're capable of doing hard things. And the next time they have to present, it's still uncomfortable, but it's a little less terrifying because they have evidence now that they can handle it. And the time after that, it's a little easier still. And eventually, with enough repetition, with enough times choosing discomfort over comfort, public speaking moves from outside their comfort zone to inside it. What was once terrifying becomes merely challenging, and what was once challenging eventually becomes comfortable. This is how you expand your comfort zone, not by staying inside it, but by repeatedly stepping outside it, by consistently choosing growth over comfort, challenge over ease, possibility over safety. And as your comfort zone expands, as you become comfortable with things that used to terrify you, you become a different person, a more capable person, a person with more skills and more confidence and more resilience, a person who can handle situations that would have broken the old version of you. The book explains that this is not about living in constant discomfort. It's not about making yourself miserable or never allowing yourself to rest or relax. It's about understanding that growth requires discomfort, that if you want to improve any area of your life, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable in that area for a while. If you want to get in shape, you have to be uncomfortable in the gym. If you want to build a business, you have to be uncomfortable with uncertainty and risk and failure. If you want to develop deep relationships, you have to be uncomfortable with vulnerability and honesty and potential rejection. If you want to learn new skills, you have to be uncomfortable being a beginner again, making mistakes, not being good at something yet. There is no path to growth that doesn't involve discomfort. And when you really accept this, when you stop expecting growth to feel comfortable and start embracing discomfort as the price of progress, your entire relationship with challenge changes. You stop seeing difficult situations as things to avoid and start seeing them as opportunities to become stronger. You stop running from fear and start running toward it because you know that's where growth lives. You develop what some people call an anti-comfort zone mindset, where you actively seek out things that push you beyond your current limits because you understand that staying comfortable means staying the same, and staying the same when you want to grow is actually the most uncomfortable position of all. Consider the person who wants to be financially successful, but whose comfort zone is limited to a regular paycheck from a job they don't love. Starting a business feels uncomfortable. Investing feels risky. Asking for a raise feels scary. Changing careers feels uncertain. So they stay in a comfortable job year after year, decade after decade, choosing comfort over growth, choosing certainty over possibility. And they wonder why their financial situation never improves. why they never achieve the success they dream about, never realizing that the very comfort they're clinging to is a thing preventing them from growing into the person who could create that success. Now imagine that same person decides to get uncomfortable, to step outside their comfort zone. They start a side business, even though it's scary and uncertain. They invest money even though it feels risky, and they might lose it. They have difficult conversations with their boss about their value, even though it makes their heart pound. They take courses and develop new skills, even though being a beginner again feels humbling and frustrating. Each of these choices is uncomfortable. Each one pushes them beyond their current limits. But each one also makes them a little bit stronger, a little bit more capable, a little bit more resilient. They're training their mind not to quit when things get hard. They're building evidence that they can handle discomfort and come out better on the other side. They're expanding their comfort zone to include things that used to terrify them. And over time, as they consistently choose discomfort over comfort, as they repeatedly step outside the safe, familiar territory into challenging, uncertain territory, they transform into a completely different person, someone who's no longer limited by fear or uncertainty, someone who's capable of creating the financial success they used to only dream about. This is the power of choosing discomfort. This is why comfort zone is the enemy of growth. Your comfort zone is like a warm, cozy blanket that feels wonderful when you're wrapped in it. But if you never leave that blanket, if you spend your whole life wrapped up in comfort and safety, you miss out on everything else life has to offer. You miss the adventure, the excitement, the sense of accomplishment that comes from doing hard things. You miss the opportunity to discover capabilities you didn't know you had. You miss the chance to become the fullest, strongest, most capable version of yourself. And the tragedy is that most people choose the blanket. They choose comfort, not because they consciously decide that a small, safe life is what they want, but because in each individual moment, comfort just feels better than discomfort. Safety just feels better than risk. The familiar just feels better than the unknown. They don't realize that all those small, comfortable choices are adding up to a life they don't actually want, a life that's smaller and more limited than what they're capable of living. So the question you have to ask yourself, the question that will determine your entire future, is this: what do you value more, comfort or growth? Do you want to stay who you are, or do you want to become who you could be? Do you want to live in the small, safe circle where you already know, or do you want to expand into the vast territory of what's possible? And once you've answered that question honestly, once you've decided that you value growth more than comfort, then you have to make a commitment to yourself. A commitment to regularly, consistently, deliberately step outside your comfort zone, to choose a challenging path over the easy one, to embrace discomfort as a signal that you're growing rather than a signal to retreat. Start small if you need to. You don't have to make huge, terrifying leaps all at once. Just do one thing today that makes you uncomfortable, one thing that pushes you slightly beyond your current limits. Have a conversation you've been avoiding. Try a skill you've been too scared to attempt. Go somewhere you've never been. Speak up when you'd usually stay quiet. Make a decision you've been putting off. Each small step outside your comfort zone makes the next step easier. Each time you choose discomfort and survive it and grow from it, you're training your mind to be tougher and more resilient. You're proving to yourself that you're capable of handling challenges. You're becoming someone who doesn't run from difficulty but runs toward it, knowing that on the other side of discomfort is always growth, always progress, always a better, stronger, more capable version of yourself. Failure is proof that you are trying. We live in a world that celebrates success and hides failure, a world where social media shows you everyone's highlight reel, but never their struggles, a world where you see the finished product, but not the 100 failed attempts that came before it. And because of this, most people have developed a completely backward relationship with failure. They see failure as something shameful, something to be avoided at all costs, something that proves you're not good enough or smart enough or talented enough. And this fear of failure becomes paralyzing. It stops them from trying new things, from taking risks, from pursuing their dreams. Because what if they fail? What if they try their best and it doesn't work out? What if people see them fail and judge them or laugh at them or think less of them? So they play it safe. They stick to things they know they can succeed at. They never attempt anything truly challenging or meaningful, and they go through life wondering what could have been if only they'd been brave enough to try. But here's a truth that will completely change how you see failure, a truth that successful people in every field have learned and internalized. Failure isn't the opposite of success. Failure is part of success. Failure is proof that you are trying, that you're pushing yourself beyond what's safe and easy, that you're attempting things that actually matter. Think about what it means when you never fail at anything. It means you're only doing things you already know how to do. Things that are so easy and so safe that success is guaranteed. And there's no growth in that. There's no challenge. There's no expansion of your capabilities. The only way to never fail is to never try anything difficult. And what kind of life is that? A small life, a safe life, a life where you never discover what you're truly capable of achieving. On the other hand, when you're failing regularly, when you're experiencing setbacks and obstacles and things not working out the way you hoped, that's actually a sign that you're doing something right, that you're stretching yourself, that you're operating at the edge of your current abilities where real growth happens. Every successful person you admire, every athlete who won championships, every entrepreneur who built a thriving business, every artist who created something beautiful, every scientist who made a breakthrough discovery, they all have one thing in common. They failed far more than they succeeded. They experienced rejection and defeat and disappointment over and over again. But they didn't let those failures define them or stop them. Instead, they used those failures as information, as feedback, as stepping stones on the path to eventual success. The book reframes failure in a way that's incredibly powerful and liberating. Failure is not defeat. Failure is feedback. When something doesn't work out the way you hoped, you haven't been defeated. You've been given valuable information about what doesn't work. And that information is just as valuable as knowing what does work, maybe even more valuable. Thomas Edison famously said he didn't fail 10,000 times trying to invent the light bulb. He successfully discovered 10,000 ways that didn't work, and each one of those failures brought him closer to the solution that eventually changed the world. He didn't see those unsuccessful attempts as proof that he should quit. He saw them as necessary steps in the learning process, as feedback that helped him understand a problem better and try different approaches. This is the mindset shift that separates people who achieve extraordinary things from people who give up at the first sign of difficulty. Successful people see failure as feedback, as data, as lessons that make them smarter and more prepared for the next attempt. When they try something and it doesn't work, they don't think, "I'm a failure." They think, "That approach didn't work. What can I learn from this? What will I do differently next time?" They extract a lesson from the setback. They analyze what went wrong and why. They adjust their strategy, and they try again and again and again, each failure making them a little bit wiser, a little bit more skilled, a little bit closer to figuring out what actually works. And here's something most people don't realize. Every setback, every failure, every time things don't go according to plan, these experiences train your mind to become stronger, smarter, and more prepared for the next level. When you try something difficult and fail, it hurts. There's no denying that. It's disappointing and frustrating and sometimes embarrassing. But if you push through that discomfort, if you refuse to let the failure define you or stop you, something powerful happens in your mind. You develop resilience, the mental toughness to handle adversity, the confidence that comes from knowing you can survive failure and come back stronger. You learn that failure isn't fatal, that it doesn't destroy you, that you can fall down and get back up, and this knowledge, this deep inner knowing that you can handle setbacks, becomes one of your greatest assets because now you're willing to take bigger risks, attempt harder challenges, pursue bigger dreams, because you're no longer paralyzed by the fear of failure. You know from experience that even if you fail, even if things don't work out, you'll be okay, you'll learn something valuable, and you'll be better prepared for the next attempt. Consider someone learning to play a musical instrument. In the beginning, almost every note they play is wrong. Every song they attempt sounds terrible. They fail constantly at producing the sound they want to create. If they saw each wrong note as a personal failure, as proof they're not musical, as a reason to quit, they would never improve. They would give up in frustration after the first few practice sessions. But if they understand that those wrong notes are not failures but feedback, that each mistake is teaching their fingers where not to be placed, teaching their ear what not to sound like, gradually building the muscle memory and auditory skills they need to play correctly, then those failures become essential parts of the learning process. And after weeks and months and years of playing thousands of wrong notes, of failing in small ways every single day, but learning from each failure and adjusting and trying again, they eventually become skilled musicians, not because they avoided failure, but because they failed so many times that they learned from all those failures and gradually, incrementally got better. This same principle applies to everything in life. You learn to walk by falling down hundreds of times as a baby. You learn to communicate by saying words wrong and being corrected. You learn any new skill by being terrible at it first, by making mistakes, by failing in small ways that teach you how to succeed. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the teacher of success. It's the process through which success becomes possible. And yet, despite this obvious truth, most adults have forgotten this lesson that they learned naturally as children. Somewhere along the way, they started seeing failure as something terrible rather than something natural and necessary. They started letting fear of failure prevent them from trying. They started playing it safe and avoiding challenges. And in doing so, they stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped discovering what they're capable of achieving. The book teaches you to reclaim that childhood fearlessness, to see failure the way a child sees falling while learning to walk. Not as a reason to quit, but as a natural part of the learning process. Not as proof you can't do it, but as proof you're trying, you're practicing, you're in the arena actually attempting something rather than sitting safely on the sidelines. And when you adopt this mindset, when you truly internalize that failure is feedback rather than defeat, it transforms how you approach every challenge in your life. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what will I learn? You stop being devastated by setbacks and start being curious about them, examining them for lessons and insights. You stop hiding your failures out of shame and start sharing them as part of your growth story. You understand that the path to any meaningful achievement is paved with failures, and instead of trying to avoid that path, you walk it willingly, knowing that each stumble makes you stronger, each setback makes you smarter, each failure prepares you for eventual success. Think about the most successful entrepreneurs, the ones who built businesses worth millions or billions of dollars. Almost all of them failed multiple times before they succeeded. They started businesses that went bankrupt. They launched products that nobody wanted. They made investments that lost money. They hired wrong people and made terrible decisions and experienced crushing disappointments. But they didn't let those failures stop them. They let those failures teach them. Each failed business taught them something about what customers actually want, what strategies actually work, what mistakes to avoid next time. Each setback made them more knowledgeable, more experienced, more prepared to succeed when the right opportunity came along. They weren't more talented than other people. They weren't luckier. They weren't smarter. They just failed more and learned more and kept trying when others gave up. And eventually, all those lessons from all those failures combined to create the knowledge and skills and resilience they needed to build something successful. This is why failure is actually proof that you're trying, proof that you're in the game, proof that you're attempting things that matter. The person who never fails is the person who never tries anything difficult, never takes any risks, never pushes beyond their comfort zone. And yes, they avoid the pain of failure, but they also avoid the possibility of achieving anything significant. Meanwhile, the person who fails regularly, who tries and falls short and gets back up and tries again, they're the one who's actually living, actually growing, actually moving toward their goals, even if the path isn't straight and smooth. Every failure is evidence of courage, evidence that you value the possibility of success more than the safety of not trying. And that courage, that willingness to risk failure in pursuit of something meaningful, that's what separates people who achieve their dreams from people who just talk about them. The book also teaches you to change your relationship with failure by changing how you interpret it. When you fail at something, you have a choice in how you explain that failure to yourself. You can tell yourself, I fail because I'm not good enough, because I don't have what it takes, because success isn't meant for people like me. And if you choose that interpretation, you'll feel defeated, you'll lose confidence, you'll be less likely to try again. Or you can tell yourself, I fail because I tried something difficult, because I'm still learning, because I haven't figured out the right approach yet. But each attempt teaches me something valuable and brings me closer to success. And if you choose this interpretation, you'll feel motivated, you'll maintain confidence, you'll be eager to try again with the lessons you learned. The failure itself is the same, the outcome is the same, but your interpretation of it determines whether it destroys your confidence or builds your resilience, whether it stops you from trying or motivates you to try harder. And you get to choose. You always get to choose how you interpret your failures, what story you tell yourself about what they mean. And the most successful people consistently choose the empowering interpretation. They consistently frame failure as feedback and learning rather than as proof of inadequacy. So when you experience failure, and you will experience failure, if you're trying anything worth doing, ask yourself these questions. What did I learn from this? What will I do differently next time? What skills do I need to develop? What knowledge do I need to gain? How has this failure made me stronger or smarter or more prepared? These questions transform failure from an endpoint into a stepping stone, from defeat into data, from something that stops you into something that propels you forward. And remember, the most inspiring success stories are never about people who got it right the first time. They're about people who failed and failed and failed but refused to quit, who kept learning and adjusting and trying until they finally broke through. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers before Harry Potter was accepted. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Oprah was fired from her first television job. Walt Disney's first animation company went bankrupt. Steven Spielberg was rejected by film school 3 times. Colonel Sanders was rejected more than 1,000 times before someone agreed to his chicken recipe. These people didn't succeed despite their failures. They succeeded because of their failures, because each rejection taught them something. Each setback made them more determined. Each failure strengthened their resolve and deepened their understanding of their craft. They understood that failure is not the opposite of success, but the pathway to it, that you can't get to extraordinary achievement without going through ordinary failure, that the only real failure is a failure to try, the failure to get back up, the failure to learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward. So don't be afraid of failure. Expect it, embrace it, learn from it. Use it as proof that you're trying, that you're growing, that you're pushing yourself towards something meaningful, and know that every failure is training your mind to become stronger, smarter, and more prepared for success that's coming. Control what you can, ignore what you can't. One of the biggest sources of stress and anxiety in most people's lives, one of the things that drains their mental energy and leaves them feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, is worry about things they have absolutely no power to change. Think about how much time you spend worrying about what other people think of you, about situations that might happen in the future, about decisions other people are making about the economy or the weather or traffic, or 1,000 other things that are completely outside your control. All that worrying, all that mental energy you're spending on things you can't influence or change, it's not doing anything productive. It's not solving any problems. It's not making anything better. It's just draining you, stealing your focus and your peace and your ability to actually make a difference in the areas where you do have power. And the tragic irony is that while you're wasting all this energy worrying about things you can't control, you're often neglecting the things you can control, the things that would actually make a real difference in your life if you focus on them with the same intensity that you currently spend on worry. The book teaches something that sounds simple, but is incredibly profound when you actually apply it. Stop wasting energy on things you can't control and fully commit to the things you can. This is about developing mental focus, about becoming strategic with where you direct your attention and your effort, about understanding that your mental energy is a limited resource and you need to spend it wisely if you want to achieve anything meaningful. When you spend your energy worrying about things outside your control, you're essentially pouring water into a bucket with holes in the bottom. It just drains away without accomplishing anything, leaving you depleted. But when you direct that same energy toward things you actually can control, when you focus on the areas where your effort can make a real difference, that's when you start seeing results. That's when you start making progress. That's when you transform from someone who feels helpless and overwhelmed into someone who feels empowered and effective. So let's be really clear about what you can and cannot control, because most people waste an enormous amount of energy on things in the cannot control category while neglecting things in the can control category. You cannot control what other people think about you, what they say about you, how they judge you, whether they like you or approve of your choices. You cannot control the past. You cannot change what already happened. You cannot undo mistakes or rewrite history no matter how much you ruminate about it. You cannot control most future outcomes. You cannot guarantee that your plans will work out exactly as you hope. You cannot prevent bad things from happening. You cannot make other people behave the way you want them to. You cannot control the economy, the job market, the political situation, the traffic, the weather, other people's moods, global events, or a million other external circumstances that affect your life. And when you spend your mental energy worrying about these things, when you lie awake at night anxious about what someone might think or what might go wrong, or what happened in the past that you wish you could change, you're literally wasting your life energy on things that your worry cannot influence in any way. Your worry doesn't change other people's opinions. It doesn't alter the past. It doesn't control the future. It doesn't affect circumstances beyond your reach. It just makes you anxious and stressed and exhausted. But here's what you can control. Here's where your focus should be. Here's where your mental energy can actually make a real difference. You can control your effort. You can control how hard you try, how much work you put in, how committed you are to your goals. Nobody can take that away from you. No external circumstance can prevent you from giving your best effort. You can control your attitude. You can control how you choose to interpret situations, how you respond to challenges, whether you approach life with optimism or pessimism, gratitude or resentment, courage or fear. Your attitude is always your choice regardless of what's happening around you. You can control your consistency. You can control whether you show up every day, whether you stick to your commitments, whether you maintain your standards and habits regardless of how you feel or what obstacles appear. You can control your preparation. You can control how much you learn, how much you practice, how ready you make yourself for opportunities. You can control your words and your actions. You can control how you treat people, what you say, what you do, the choices you make moment by moment. You can control where you direct your attention, what you focus on, what you spend your time thinking about. And these things, these controllable elements, these are incredibly powerful. These are the things that actually determine the quality and direction of your life far more than any external circumstance ever could. The ancient Stoic philosophers understood this truth thousands of years ago, and their wisdom is just as relevant today. They taught that the path to peace and effectiveness is to focus entirely on what's within your control and accept everything outside your control with equanimity. Marcus Aurelius, who was the emperor of Rome and faced enormous pressures and challenges, wrote in his personal journal that he constantly reminded himself to focus on his own thoughts and actions rather than getting upset about things beyond his influence. He understood that he couldn't control the actions of his enemies, the loyalty of his subjects, the success of military campaigns, or countless other aspects of running an empire, but he could control his own character, his own decisions, his own response to every situation, and by focusing on that, by putting all his energy into being the best version of himself rather than worrying about things he couldn't change, he became one of history's most respected leaders. This same principle applies to your life right now, whatever your circumstances might be. Maybe you're worried about whether you'll get a promotion at work, whether your boss likes you, whether your company will downsize, whether the economy will crash. Those worries are understandable, but they're focused on things outside your control, and worrying about them doesn't help you. It just drains you. But you know what you can control? You can control the quality of your work. You can show up every day and give your absolute best effort. You can develop new skills that make you more valuable. You can build relationships with colleagues. You can maintain a positive attitude even when things are uncertain. You can prepare yourself for multiple possibilities so that whatever happens, you're ready. When you shift your focus from worrying about outcomes you can't control to committing fully to actions you can control, something remarkable happens. You feel more powerful, more at peace, more effective. The anxiety that comes from feeling helpless in the face of circumstances beyond your control starts to fade, replaced by a sense of agency and purpose that comes from knowing you're doing everything within your power. Or maybe you're worried about what people think of you, whether they judge you, whether they approve of your choices, whether they're talking about you behind your back. Again, these are understandable concerns, but they're completely outside your control. You cannot control other people's thoughts and opinions. You cannot make everyone like you or approve of you, and try to do so is a recipe for exhaustion and disappointment. But you can control how you carry yourself. You can control living according to your own values rather than constantly trying to please others. You can control being genuine and authentic rather than constantly performing for an audience. You can control treating people with respect and kindness regardless of how they treat you. And when you focus on controlling these things, on being someone you're proud of regardless of others' opinions, you paradoxically often earn more genuine respect than when you were desperately trying to control what people thought of you. The book teaches mental focus. And part of that focus is learning to quickly identify when your mind is spinning and worry about things you cannot control and deliberately redirecting that mental energy toward things you can control. This becomes a practice, a skill you develop over time. You notice yourself worrying about whether it will rain on your outdoor event, and you catch that thought and redirect. I can't control the weather, but I can control having a backup plan and staying positive regardless of what happens. You notice yourself anxious about whether you'll get the job you interviewed for, and you redirect. I can't control their decision, but I can control following up professionally and continue to search for other opportunities while I wait. You notice yourself ruminating about something embarrassing you said 3 years ago, and you redirect. I can't change the past, but I can control learning from that experience and being more thoughtful with my words going forward. Each time you do this, each time you pull your focus away from the uncontrollable and redirect it to the controllable, you're training your mind. You're building the mental muscle of effective focus. You're becoming someone who spends their energy wisely rather than wastefully. And the beautiful thing is that when you consistently focus on what you can control, when you pour your effort and attention into the areas where you actually have power, you start to see real changes in your life. The things you can control, your effort, your attitude, your consistency. These are the very things that most directly influence your outcomes. You can't control whether you get the job, but if you control your preparation and your effort, you dramatically increase your chances. You can't control whether people like you, but if you control your character and your kindness, you become genuinely likable. You can't control whether your business idea will succeed, but if you control your consistency and your learning and your adaptation, you give yourself the best possible chance of success. In other words, by focusing on what you can control, you're actually influencing many of the outcomes you care about, just indirectly, through the only path that's actually available to you. Think about an athlete competing in a championship game. They cannot control the referee's calls. They cannot control how well the opposing team plays. They cannot control the weather conditions or the crowd's reactions or whether they'll win the game. If they spend their mental energy worrying about these uncontrollable factors, they'll be distracted, anxious, and less effective. But a great athlete knows to focus exclusively on what they can control. Their preparation, their effort, their attitude, their execution of skills they practice, their response to each moment in the game. They block out everything else and commit fully to these controllable elements. And by doing this, by refusing to waste mental energy on the uncontrollable and instead fully committing to controllable, they perform at their highest level and give themselves the best possible chance of achieving the outcome they want. This is the mental focus the book teaches. This is the mindset that transforms worry into power. This is how you stop being drained by anxiety about things you cannot influence and start being energized by full commitment to things you can. It's also important to understand that accepting what you cannot control doesn't mean being passive or giving up. It means being strategic about where you direct your energy. There's a difference between acceptance and resignation. Resignation says, I'm helpless. Nothing I do matters. I might as well not try. Acceptance says, I cannot control this particular thing, so I will not waste my limited energy worrying about it. Instead, I will direct that energy toward the things I can influence. Acceptance is empowering because it frees you from the exhausting and futile task of trying to control the uncontrollable and allows you to fully commit to the controllable. And when you make this shift, when you truly embrace this principle of controlling what you can and letting go of what you can't, you experience a profound sense of peace and power. The peace comes from no longer being tormented by anxiety about things beyond your reach, from accepting that you've done everything within your power and the rest is not your responsibility. The power comes from channeling all your energy, all your focus, all your effort into the areas where you actually can make a difference, where your actions actually matter, where your consistency and attitude and effort can change outcomes. You stop being scattered and start being focused. You stop being anxious and start being purposeful. You stop feeling like a victim of circumstances and start feeling like an active agent in your own life. So starting today, starting right now, practice this principle. When you notice yourself worrying or stressing about something, pause and ask yourself honestly, is this within my control? If the answer is no, if it's something you genuinely cannot influence or change, then make a conscious decision to let it go, to stop giving it your mental energy, to accept it as outside your domain, and then immediately redirect that energy to something you can control. Ask yourself, what can I control in this situation? What action can I take? What attitude can I choose? What effort can I make? And then commit to that fully. Pour your energy into that. Focus on that with everything you have. This is how you stop worrying draining your mental energy. This is how you develop the mental focus that successful people have. This is how you transform from someone who feels powerless and overwhelmed into someone who feels capable and effective, because you're no longer wasting your finite energy on infinite uncontrollable factors. You're investing it wisely in the factors that are within your power to influence. And those factors, your effort, your attitude, your consistency, those are more than enough to change your life if you give them your full commitment and focus. Small wins build an unbreakable mind. There's a common misconception that mental strength is built through massive victories, through achieving huge goals and accomplishing extraordinary things. And while those big achievements certainly feel amazing when they happen, they're not actually what builds an unbreakable mind. In fact, if you wait for massive victories to feel strong, if you only count the big accomplishment as evidence of your capability, you'll spend most of your time feeling weak and discouraged because those massive victories are rare, they take time, they require enormous effort, and there are long stretches between them where it can feel like you're not making any progress at all. But here's what truly builds mental strength. Here's what creates the kind of unbreakable mind that can withstand any challenge and push through any obstacle. Small wins, daily victories. The seemingly insignificant accomplishments that you stack up day after day after day. You don't need massive victories to stay strong. You don't need to achieve something extraordinary to build confidence and resilience. What you need is consistent small successes, the kind of wins that might seem trivial to an outside observer, but that accumulate over time to create powerful momentum and unshakable self-belief. Think about what a small win actually is. It's anything you said you would do and then actually did. It's any commitment you made to yourself that you honored. It's any moment when you chose the harder right path over the easier wrong path. It's any instance where you pushed past discomfort when you could have quit. A small win is waking up when your alarm goes off instead of hitting snooze. It's completing your workout even though you didn't feel like it. It's eating the healthy meal you planned instead of ordering takeout. It's spending an hour working on your goal when you could have scrolled social media. It's having the difficult conversation you've been avoiding. It's writing for 20 minutes even though you're not inspired. It's practicing your skill even though you're tired. It's keeping your word to yourself about something small. These wins might not seem like much in the moment. Nobody's going to give you an award for getting out of bed on time or choosing a salad over pizza. These aren't the kind of achievements you post about on social media or brag about to your friends. But here's what most people don't understand. These small wins are the building blocks of an unbreakable mind. They're the daily training that creates mental toughness. They're the evidence you collect that proves to yourself that you are someone who follows through, someone who keeps commitments, someone who doesn't quit. The book shows how stacking small successes trains your mind in a very specific and powerful way. It trains your mind to believe, I don't quit, I finish. Every time you complete something you said you would complete, no matter how small, you're reinforcing this identity. You're proving to yourself through action that you are a finisher, not a quitter, that you are someone whose word to yourself means something, that you are capable of doing hard things even when you don't feel like it. And your brain is keeping score, your subconscious is paying attention. Every small win gets recorded as evidence of who you are, and as that evidence accumulates, as you stack win upon win, your self-image begins to shift, your confidence begins to grow, your mental strength begins to solidify. You start to genuinely believe, deep in your core, that you're the kind of person who finishes what they start. And once you believe that about yourself, once that becomes part of your identity, it changes everything about how you approach challenges. Let's talk about momentum, because this is one of the most powerful aspects of small wins. Momentum in physics is the force that keeps an object moving in the same direction, and momentum works the same way in your psychological life. When you're sitting still, when you haven't accomplished anything, when you're stuck in inaction, it takes enormous energy to get moving, to overcome that inertia and start making progress. But when you have momentum, when you're already moving, when you've already been achieving small wins consistently, it becomes easier to keep going, easier to tackle the next challenge, easier to maintain your effort. Small daily wins create this momentum. Each small success makes the next one more likely. Each time you follow through on a commitment, it becomes easier to follow through the next time. Each day that you keep your word to yourself makes it more natural to keep your word the following day. It's like pushing a heavy boulder. The first push barely moves it. The second push moves a little more. But once you've got it rolling, once you build up momentum through consistent effort, That boulder starts moving more easily, and eventually it's rolling on its own, and your job is just to keep it going rather than to start from scratch. This is why people who achieve great things often talk about the power of consistency and daily practice. They understand that massive victories are built on top of thousands of small wins, that the championship is won through years of daily training, that the successful business is built through daily actions repeated consistently, that the book gets written through daily writing sessions, that transformation happens through small choices made over and over until they become who you are. Think about someone training for a marathon who has never run more than a mile in their life. The marathon itself, running 26.2 miles, that's a massive victory. That's the big goal. But they focus only on that enormous distance. It feels overwhelming. It feels impossible. Their mind rebels against the idea that they could ever run that far. But if they focus on small wins, if they celebrate every single run they complete in their training program, if they acknowledge each time they push a little further than they did before, if they recognize every morning they get up and put on their running shoes as a victory, then they're building something powerful. Each of those small wins is training their mind to believe, I am a runner. I am someone who shows up. I am someone who follows through on my training plan. And after months of stacking these small wins, after hundreds of training runs completed, after countless mornings when they didn't feel like running, but did it anyway, something amazing has happened. They built an unbreakable mind. They've created such strong momentum and such deep self-belief that when marathon day arrives, their mind doesn't doubt whether they can finish. It knows they can because they've proven it to themselves through months of small daily victories. The marathon itself becomes just another run, bigger than the others certainly, but fundamentally the same kind of thing they've been doing successfully every day. The book emphasizes that you need to actively acknowledge and celebrate these small wins. You need to consciously recognize them as victories rather than dismissing them as insignificant. Most people make the mistake of only acknowledging the big achievements, while completely overlooking the small daily successes that actually build mental strength. They finish their workout and immediately think, well, that was just one workout. It doesn't really matter. I'm still out of shape. Instead of thinking, I did what I said I would do. That's a win. That's evidence that I'm someone who follows through. They complete a day of healthy eating and think, one day doesn't make a difference. I still have so far go. Instead of thinking, I kept my commitment to myself today. I'm building a habit. I'm becoming someone who makes healthy choices. This dismissal of small wins is incredibly damaging because it robs you of the very motivation and confidence that would help you continue. It prevents you from building the positive momentum that makes future success easier. But when you deliberately acknowledge your small wins, when you consciously recognize each time you follow through as evidence of your strength and capability, you're feeding your motivation. You're building your confidence. You're creating positive momentum that propels you forward. You can do this in simple ways. Keep a journal where you write down your daily wins, no matter how small. Create a checklist and feel the satisfaction of marking things complete. Tell yourself explicitly, I said I would do this, and I did it. That's who I am. I'm someone who finishes. Take a moment at the end of each day to acknowledge what you accomplished rather than only focusing on what you didn't accomplish. These practices might seem simple or even silly, but they're incredibly powerful because they train your mind to look for evidence of success rather than evidence of failure. They help you build the identity of someone who is strong and capable and reliable, someone who keeps their word, someone who doesn't quit. And here's something really important to understand. Small wins don't just build confidence for future tasks. They actually get you through difficult moments in the present. When you're in the middle of a hard challenge, when you're exhausted and want to quit, when your mind is screaming at you to stop, you can draw strength from the stack of small wins you've already accumulated. You can remind yourself, I've done hard things before. I've pushed through when I didn't feel like it dozens of times. I've proven to myself that I can finish what I start. This is just one more challenge, and I know I can handle it because I've handled all the others. Your past small wins become evidence that you can cite to convince yourself to keep going. They become the foundation of self-trust that allows you to believe in your ability to persevere. Without that foundation, without that stack of small wins to reference, you're trying to convince yourself to do something hard with no evidence that you're capable of it, and that's a much more difficult mental battle to win. This is also why it's so important to start building small wins immediately, even if you're currently at rock bottom, even if you've been failing for years, even if you have no confidence in yourself right now. You can start today, right now, with one small win. Choose something tiny, something you're absolutely certain you can accomplish. Maybe it's just making your bed, or drinking a glass of water, or taking a 5-minute walk, or reading one page of a book. Do that one small thing. Acknowledge it as a win. And then tomorrow, do it again and maybe add one more small thing. You're not trying to transform your entire life overnight. You're just stacking small wins, building evidence, creating momentum, training your mind to believe that you are someone who follows through. And as those wins accumulate, as you go from 1 win to 5 wins to 20 wins to 100 wins, you'll notice something incredible happening. You're not the same person you were when you started. You've built an unbreakable mind not through massive victories, but through the steady accumulation of small successes that have proven to you, beyond any doubt, that you are capable, that you are strong, that you are someone who doesn't quit. You're someone who finishes. Think about it like building a wall, one brick at a time. Each small win is a brick, and by itself, a single brick doesn't look like much. It doesn't protect you from anything. It doesn't seem significant. But when you place that brick carefully, and then place another brick on top of it, and then another and another, day after day, week after week, month after month, eventually you build a wall, a strong, sturdy wall that can withstand storms and protect you from threats. And that wall is your unbreakable mind, built not from one massive effort, but from hundreds or thousands of small wins stacked on top of each other. Most people never build this wall because they're waiting for the massive victory. They're waiting to feel motivated enough to accomplish something big. They're looking for the dramatic transformation moment. And while they're waiting, they're not stacking any bricks at all. They're not collecting any wins. They're not building any foundation of self-belief. But you don't have to make that mistake. You can start stacking your small wins today. You can start building your unbreakable mind right now, one small victory at a time, one kept commitment at a time, one moment of following through when you didn't feel like it at a time. And 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, you'll look back and realize that all those small wins that seemed insignificant in the moment have accumulated into something extraordinary, an unshakable belief in yourself, a proven track record of finishing what you start, mental strength that can carry you through any challenge, and the momentum to keep achieving. Because you've trained your mind to believe, I don't quit, I finish. And that belief, built on the foundation of countless small daily victories, is what makes your mind truly unbreakable. Hard times create strong identity. There's a truth about life that nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Hard times are not optional. Difficulty is not something you can avoid if you just make the right choices or work hard enough or plan carefully enough. Hardship is woven into the fabric of human existence, and at some point, probably at many points, life is going to get hard, really hard, harder than you think you can handle. You're going to face loss and disappointment and failure and pain and uncertainty and fear. You're going to encounter obstacles that seem insurmountable and challenges that feel unfair. You're going to have moments where you question everything and wonder if you have the strength to keep going. And in those moments, when life gets hard, when the pressure increases and the pain intensifies, and everything feels like it's falling apart, most people break. They crumble under the weight of adversity. They give up on their goals. They abandon their commitments. They lose themselves in despair or bitterness or resignation. They let the hardship defeat them and define them. And they emerge from those difficult times smaller and weaker and more fearful than they were before. But it doesn't have to be that way. Hardship doesn't have to break you. In fact, hardship can be the very thing that makes you, that forges you into someone stronger and more capable and more resilient than you ever could become in comfortable times. This book teaches something profound and life-changing. You can use hardship as identity-building fuel. You can take the very experiences that would break most people and transform them into the foundation of an unshakable identity, an identity built on the proven truth that you're the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough, who doesn't quit when things get hard, who rises to challenges rather than shrinking from them. Think about identity for a moment, because this is crucial to understand. Your identity is the story you tell yourself about who you are. It's the collection of beliefs you hold about your character and your capabilities and your nature. Some people have an identity built on comfort and ease. They think of themselves as people who need things to go smoothly, who require favorable circumstances to function well, who fall apart when life gets difficult. This identity is fragile because it depends on external conditions that are beyond their control. And when those conditions change, when life inevitably gets hard, their entire sense of self crumbles because they define themselves by their ability to handle only the easy times. But you can build a different kind of identity, an identity forged in hardship, an identity based not on how you handle things when they're easy, but on how you handle things when they're impossibly hard. This is an identity that says, I am someone who faces adversity and doesn't break. I am someone who encounters obstacles and finds a way through them or over them or around them. I am someone who experiences pain and keeps moving forward anyway. I am the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough. And here's the powerful thing about this identity. Once you've built it, once you've proven it to yourself through lived experience, once you've actually gone through hard times and kept going, nobody can take that away from you. No external circumstance can shake it, because it's based on truth, on evidence, on the undeniable reality that you've already survived and persevered through difficulty. The book teaches you to consciously use hardship as identity-building fuel, to deliberately reframe difficult experiences not as things happening to you, but as things that are shaping you, strengthening you, proving to you who you really are. When you're going through something hard, instead of thinking, why is this happening to me? This is terrible. I can't handle this. This is breaking me. You think this is hard, but hard times are where I build my identity. This is my opportunity to prove to myself what I'm made of. This is the experience that's going to make me stronger. This shift in perspective doesn't make the hardship less painful. It doesn't magically make the difficulty disappear, but it completely changes what the hardship means to you and what you take away from it. Instead of the hard time being evidence that life is cruel and you're a victim and you're not strong enough, the hard time becomes evidence that you are resilient, that you are capable of handling more than you thought, that you are exactly the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough. Consider someone who loses their job unexpectedly, a situation that's genuinely difficult, that brings financial stress and uncertainty and fear, and maybe a blow to their ego and their sense of security. Most people in this situation would break in some way. They'd spiral into depression or panic. They'd see themselves as a victim of circumstances. They'd let the setback define them as someone who failed, someone who wasn't good enough, someone who's now in a worse position than before. And with that identity, with that way of interpreting the hardship, they might stay stuck for months or years, paralyzed by fear and negative self-perception. But someone who understands how to use hardship as identity-building fuel would approach the same situation completely differently. Yes, they'd feel the pain and the fear and the uncertainty. Those are natural human responses to difficulty, but they would consciously choose to see this hardship as an opportunity to prove who they are. They would say to themselves, this is hard. Losing my job is really hard, but I am the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough. I am the kind of person who faces adversity and finds a way through it. This is my chance to prove my resilience. And with that identity driving their actions, they would update their resume. They would network aggressively. They would learn new skills. They would apply to jobs even when they felt discouraged. They would keep pushing forward even when it was uncomfortable and scary. And eventually they would find a new job, maybe even a better one than they had before. And here's what's most important. They would emerge from that hardship with a stronger identity, with proven evidence that they're indeed someone who keeps going when it gets tough, with a deep inner knowing that they can handle adversity, that they've been tested and they didn't break, and that knowledge becomes part of their core identity, becomes armor that protects them in future difficulties, becomes fuel that propels them through the next challenge. The book emphasizes that hard times are actually necessary for building a strong identity, that you cannot become truly resilient, truly confident, truly unbreakable without going through hardship and proving to yourself that you can survive it. It's like the process of forging steel. You can't create strong steel without extreme heat and pressure, without the harsh conditions that most materials couldn't withstand. And it's the same with human character. Easy times don't build character. They don't test you or strengthen you or reveal what you're capable of. They just keep you comfortable and soft and unprepared for real challenges. But hard times are forged that create something stronger, that burns away weakness and doubt, that hammers you into a more resilient version of yourself. And if you understand this, if you embrace this truth instead of resenting it, you can walk into hard times not with dread, but with a kind of warrior mindset that says, this is going to hurt, this is going to be difficult, but this is also where I become who I'm meant to be. This is where I build the identity that will carry me through anything. There's a famous saying that hard times create strong people. Strong people create good times create weak people, and weak people create hard times. And while this is often applied to societies and generations, it's absolutely true on an individual level as well. When you go through hard times and you use them as identity-building fuel instead of letting them break you, you become a strong person, someone with deep reserves of resilience and capability. And that strength allows you to create better times for yourself, to build a better life, to handle challenges more effectively. But if you only experience good times, if you're never tested or challenged, if life is always comfortable and easy, you become weak. You develop a fragile identity that depends on circumstances staying favorable, and when hard times inevitably come, you're unprepared and you break. This is why protecting yourself from all hardship, trying to live a life without difficulty or struggle or pain, is actually one of the worst things you can do for yourself, because it prevents you from building the strong identity that can only come from going through hard times and not breaking. The book teaches you to actually embrace hardship when it comes, not in a masochistic way where you seek out suffering for its own sake, but in a growth-oriented way where you recognize that the difficult experience is giving you something valuable, something you could never get from easy times. It's giving you the opportunity to build evidence of your strength, to prove to yourself what you're capable of, to forge an identity based on resilience rather than fragility. When you're in the middle of something hard, you can literally say to yourself, I am the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough, and then you can act in alignment with that identity. You can make choices that reinforce that belief about yourself. And with each choice, with each day that you keep going despite the difficulty, you're not just getting to the hard time. You're building something permanent and valuable. You're building an unshakable identity that will serve you for the rest of your life. Think about the people you most admire, the people who seem to have an inner strength that's almost superhuman, the people who face enormous challenges with grace and determination, the people who build something remarkable or overcome incredible odds. If you look at their stories, you'll almost always find that they went through hard times, really hard times, times that would have broken most people, but instead of being broken by those experiences, they were forged by them. They used those hard times as identity-building fuel. They emerged from the crucible stronger and more capable and more certain of who they are. They didn't succeed despite their hardships. They succeeded in part because of their hardships, because those difficult experiences built in them an identity of someone who doesn't quit, someone who perseveres, someone who finds a way. And you can build that same identity. You can use your own hard times, the ones you're going through now or the ones that are coming in your future, as the raw material for becoming the strongest version of yourself. Here's a practical way to do this. When you're facing hardship, when something difficult is happening in your life, create a clear statement of the identity you're building and repeat it to yourself regularly, especially in moments when you want to quit. The statement is simple. I am the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough. Say it in the morning when you wake up. Say it when you're facing a difficult task. Say it when you're tired and discouraged. Say it when you want to give up. Say it until you believe it, and then keep saying it while you prove it through your actions. Every day that you keep going, every small action you take despite the difficulty, every moment when you choose perseverance over quitting, you're collecting evidence that this identity statement is true. You're proving to yourself that you are indeed the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough. And as that evidence accumulates, the identity becomes unshakable, becomes who you actually are rather than who you hope to be. And once you've built this identity through one hard time, it becomes easier to apply it to the next hard time, because you're not starting from scratch. You're not trying to convince yourself that you might be able to handle it. You know you can handle it because you've already proven it. You've already gone through hard times and kept going. You've already built an identity of resilience that you can now draw upon. This is why people who've overcome significant hardship often seem more confident and capable than people who've lived easier lives. It's not that they're naturally stronger or more talented. It's that they build a strong identity through hard experiences. They know from lived experience that they can handle difficulty. And that knowledge gives them a kind of fearlessness, a willingness to take on challenges that would intimidate others, because they're not afraid of hard times anymore. They've been through hard times, and they know they don't break. They know they're the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough. So when life gets hard, and it will get hard when you face obstacles and setbacks and pain and loss and all the difficulties that are part of being human, remember that you have a choice in how you respond. You have a choice in what those hard times mean and what they make of you. You can let them break you. You can see yourself as a victim. You can give up and shrink and become weaker. Or you can use them as identity-building fuel. You can see them as the forge that's making you stronger. You can keep going despite the difficulty and prove to yourself that you are indeed the kind of person who doesn't quit when things get tough. And with each hard time you survive and push through, you're building an identity that's unbreakable, an identity based on evidence and truth and lived experience, an identity that says, I can handle hard things. I've done it before and I'll do it again. I'm strong not because my life has been easy, but because my life has been hard and I kept going anyway. And that identity, forged in hardship and proven through perseverance, is one of the most valuable things you can ever build, more valuable than money or status or comfort, because it's something that can never be taken from you, something that will carry you through every future challenge, something that makes you truly unbreakable. Never giving up is a skill you can train. There's a dangerous myth that most people believe, a myth that holds them back and limits their potential and gives them an excuse to quit when things get hard. And that myth is the idea that some people are just naturally resilient, that some people are born with inner strength that allows them to never give up, while others are born without that quality and therefore can't be expected to persevere through difficulty. This myth says that resilience is a talent, something you either have or you don't, something determined by your genetics or your personality or your upbringing, something fixed and unchangeable. And if you believe this myth, if you think resilience is just a talent that some lucky people were born with, then you have a built-in excuse every time you want to quit. You can tell yourself, I'm just not one of those naturally strong people. I'm not built for this. Perseverance isn't part of who I am. And you can let yourself off the hook for giving up. But here's the truth. Here's the final message of this book, and it's one of the most powerful and liberating truths you'll ever learn. Resilience is not talent, it's training. Never giving up is not something you're born with. It's a skill you can develop, a muscle you can strengthen, a habit you can build through repeated practice. You are not born strong. You become strong by repeatedly choosing not to quit, even when quitting feels justified, even when every part of you wants to stop, even when no one would blame you for walking away. Every single time you choose to keep going when you could quit, every single time you push through difficulty instead of surrendering to it, you are training yourself in the skill of resilience. You are building the capacity to never give up, and with enough training, with enough repetitions of choosing perseverance over quitting, the skill becomes so deeply ingrained in who you are that giving up stops being an option, that pushing through becomes your automatic response to difficulty, that you become someone who simply doesn't quit no matter what. Think about any other skill you've ever learned, whether it's playing an instrument or speaking a language or cooking or driving or anything else that you weren't born knowing how to do. When you first started, you were terrible at it. You made mistakes constantly. It felt awkward and difficult, and you probably wanted to give up many times. But if you kept practicing, if you kept showing up and trying even when it was hard and frustrating, if you repeated the actions over and over despite the difficulty, something amazing happened. You got better. The skill that once felt impossible became manageable, then comfortable, then natural. Your brain created new neural pathways. Your body developed muscle memory. The repetition literally changed the structure of your brain and the capabilities of your body until you could do something that you absolutely could not do before you trained. Resilience works exactly the same way. Perseverance works exactly the same way. The ability to never give up works exactly the same way. It's not a magical quality that some people are born with. It's a skill that gets stronger every single time you practice it, every single time you choose to keep going instead of quitting. The first time you push through difficulty when you want to quit, it's incredibly hard. It takes enormous willpower. Every part of you is screaming to stop, and you have to override all those signals and force yourself to continue. But you do it, you make that choice to keep going, and something has just happened. You practice a skill of not quitting. You've completed one repetition of resilience training. You've proven to yourself that you can do it at least once. And then the next time you face a similar situation, the next time you want to quit, but you choose to keep going instead, it's still hard, but maybe it's just slightly less hard than the first time. Maybe you have a tiny bit more confidence because you've done it before. Maybe your brain remembers that you survived it last time and you can survive it again. That's the second repetition, the second training session in the skill of never giving up. And then you do it again and again and again, and each time you're building the skill a little bit more. You're strengthening the neural pathways that support perseverance. You're weakening the automatic response of quitting. You're training your mind to default to pushing through rather than giving up. This is not some abstract concept or motivational platitude. This is actual neuroscience. This is how your brain physically changes through repeated behavior. This is how you transform from someone who easily quits into someone who never gives up, not through some magical personality change or divine intervention, but through the simple, unglamorous, difficult work of repeatedly choosing not to quit over and over and over until that choice becomes who you are. The book's final message is powerful precisely because it removes all excuses and places the responsibility and the power entirely in your hands. You cannot blame your genetics for your tendency to quit. You cannot point to your childhood or your personality type or your natural temperament as reasons why perseverance is impossible for you. Because resilience is not something you're born with or without. It's something you train, and anyone can train, anyone can practice. Anyone can repeatedly choose not to quit until that becomes their default setting. This means that if you're someone who currently gives up easily, if you're someone who quits when things get hard, if you're someone who looks at resilient people and thinks, I could never be like that, you're wrong. You absolutely can be like that, not instantly, not overnight, but through training, through practice, through repeatedly making the choice to keep going even when quitting feels justified. And that phrase, even when quitting feels justified, is crucial because there will always be good reasons to quit. There will always be logical arguments for why this particular time is different, why this particular challenge is just too hard, why it makes sense to stop now. You're tired. You've been working so hard already. You face so many obstacles. The goal seems impossible. No one would blame you for stopping. You've done your best, and sometimes that's just not enough. There's no shame in knowing your limits. These thoughts will come. These justifications for quitting will feel completely reasonable and valid in the moment. And for most people, these thoughts win. These justifications convince them that quitting is the smart, reasonable, justified choice. But here's what you need to understand. Resilient people, people who never give up, they hear those same thoughts. They feel those same justifications. Quitting feels just as justified for them as it does for anyone else. The difference is that they've trained themselves to recognize those thoughts as the moment of choice, as the opportunity to practice their skill of not quitting, as the exact moment when they can strengthen their resilience by choosing to keep going despite having every reason to stop. They understand that if they only persevered when it was easy, when they felt motivated, when quitting didn't feel justified, they wouldn't be training anything, they wouldn't be building any skill. It's specifically the moments when quitting feels justified, when you have good reasons to stop, when continuing seems almost unreasonable. Those are the moments when you build resilience. Those are the repetitions that count. Those are the training sessions that make you stronger. Think about someone training at the gym to build physical strength. When they're lifting weights and it starts to hurt, when their muscles are burning and they want to stop, they have a choice. They can stop and justify it by saying, that's enough. I've done 10 reps already. I'm tired. It hurts. No one expected to do more. Or they can do one more rep, just one more beyond where they want to stop. And it's that additional rep, the one that happens when stopping feels justified. That's the rep that actually builds muscle. That's the rep that makes them stronger. The comfortable reps don't build strength. Only the hard ones do. And it's exactly the same with mental strength, with resilience, with the skill of never giving up. The times when you persevere through easy challenges don't build the skill very much. But the times when you keep going even though quitting feels completely justified, those are the times when you're really training, really building unbreakable resilience. The book emphasizes that this is a process, not a one-time decision. You don't just decide once to be resilient, and then you magically are. You train in resilience every single day, in small ways and big ways, in situations that matter and situations that seem trivial. Every time you face the choice between continuing and quitting, you're at a training opportunity. You can choose to quit and leave your resilience at its current level, or you can choose to keep going and make your resilience a little bit stronger. And the beautiful thing is that these training opportunities are everywhere. They happen all the time. You don't need to wait for some major life crisis to start training your resilience. You can train it this morning when your alarm goes off and you don't want to get out of bed. You can choose to get up anyway. That's one repetition. You can train it when you're doing a task that's boring or difficult and you want to stop and check your phone. You can choose to stay focused for 5 more minutes. That's one repetition. You can train it when you're having a conversation that's uncomfortable and you want to change the subject. You can choose to stay present and engaged. That's one repetition. You can train it when you're working toward a goal and you hit an obstacle and you want to give up, you can choose to try one more approach. That's one repetition. Each of these choices might seem small, might seem insignificant in the moment, but they're not. They're training sessions. They're building your skill. They're making you into someone who doesn't quit. One choice at a time, one repetition at a time, one day at a time. And over weeks and months and years of this training, of repeatedly choosing not to quit, even when quitting feels justified, something profound happens. Not quitting becomes who you are. It becomes your identity. It becomes your automatic response to difficulty. You don't have to think about whether to persevere or quit anymore. You don't have to have an internal debate every time things get hard. You just keep going automatically, naturally, because that's what you do. That's who you've trained yourself to be. You're someone who never gives up, and that's not because you were born with some special gift. It's because you train that skill through thousands of choices to keep going when you could have quit. There's also something important to understand about the relationship between this skill and confidence. Many people think they need to feel confident before they can persevere. They wait for confidence to arrive before they attempt difficult things. They think, once I feel strong and capable, then I'll be able to push through challenges without quitting. But they have it backwards. Confidence doesn't create the ability to persevere. Persevering creates confidence. Every time you choose not to quit, every time you push through difficulty, every time you keep going when it would be easy to stop, you create evidence that you are capable. You prove to yourself that you can do hard things, and that evidence becomes a foundation of genuine, deep confidence. This is why people who train the skill of never giving up often have this quiet, unshakable confidence about them. It's not arrogance or bravado. It's just a natural result of having proven to themselves over and over through countless small choices and some big challenges that they're the kind of person who doesn't quit. And when you know that about yourself, when you have that evidence, you face new challenges with confidence because you're not wondering if you'll give up when it gets hard. You know you won't because you've trained yourself not to. So if you take nothing else from this book, if you remember only one message, let it be this. You are not stuck being someone who gives up easily. You're not doomed by your current level of resilience. You're not limited by whatever natural tendencies you think you were born with. Resilience is a skill. Never giving up is a skill. And like any skill, you can train it. You can develop it. You can get better at it through practice. Starting right now, starting with the very next challenge you face, you can begin training yourself in the skill of not quitting. When you want to stop, when you have good reasons to quit, when continuing seems unreasonable, that's your training opportunity. That's your chance to do one more repetition of choosing perseverance. That's the moment when you build a skill that will eventually make you unbreakable. You become strong not by being born strong, but by repeatedly choosing not to quit, even when quitting feels justified, even when every logical reason supports stopping, even when no one would blame you for giving up. You just keep going one more step, one more day, one more choice to persevere, and each time you make that choice, you're not just getting through that particular challenge. You're training yourself, you're building a skill, you're becoming someone who never gives up, and that more than any talent or gift or advantage you could be born with, that's what will carry you through anything life throws at you. That's what will help you achieve goals that currently seem impossible. That's what will transform you from whoever you are now into the strongest, most resilient, most unstoppable version of yourself. So here we are at the end of these 10 powerful principles. But really, this isn't an ending at all. This is a beginning. This is the moment when you decide who you're going to become. This is the crossroads where you choose between the person you've been and the person you're capable of being. Everything you've just heard, every principle we've explored together, it all comes down to one simple truth that will either change your life or remain just another piece of information you heard once and forgot. You have the power to train your mind and never give up, and that power exists in the choices you make. Not someday in the future when conditions are perfect, not when you feel more motivated or more confident or more ready. But right now, in this moment and in the next moment when you face difficulty, and in every moment after that, when quitting feels like the easier option, think about where you were when you started listening to this. Think about that challenge you're facing, that goal you've been struggling with, that moment when you were so close to giving up. Are you still standing at that same crossroads, or have these principles shifted something inside you? Have you started to see that the voice in your head telling you to quit is not truth, but fear? Have you begun to understand that your limits are not where you think they are? Have you realized that every person you admire, every achievement you've witnessed, Every example of incredible mental strength you've ever seen, it all came from someone who was once exactly where you are now. Someone who wanted to quit, but chose to keep going. Someone who trained themselves in resilience one difficult choice at a time until not quitting became who they were. Because that's what's possible for you. That's what's waiting for you on the other side of the decision to stop giving up and start training yourself to persevere. You don't have to transform overnight. You don't have to suddenly become perfect at never quitting. You just have to make one different choice the next time you want to give up. Just apply one of these principles the next time things get hard. Just take one more step when your mind tells you to stop. And that single choice will be the beginning of everything. The first repetition in your training, the first brick in building your unbreakable mind. And here's what I want you to remember, what I want to come back to every single time you're struggling, every time you're exhausted, every time quitting feels justified. Your mind quits before your body does. So push past that mental wall and discover the strength you didn't know you had. Pain is temporary, but regret is permanent. So choose the temporary discomfort of pushing through over the permanent ache of wondering what could have been. Discipline beats motivation every time. So build systems and habits that work even when you don't feel inspired. Your inner voice decides your future. So speak to yourself like someone you're trying to build up, not tear down. Your comfort zone is the enemy of growth. So step into discomfort regularly because that's where you become more than you currently are. Failure is proof that you're trying. So see every setback as feedback and fuel, not as a reason to quit. Control what you can and ignore what you can't. So stop wasting energy on worry and pour it all into effort, attitude, and consistency. Small wins build an unbreakable mind. So celebrate every time you keep a commitment to yourself, no matter how small, because you're collecting evidence that you're someone who finishes what they start. Hard times create strong identity. So use every challenge as an opportunity to prove to yourself that you're the kind of person who keeps going when it gets tough. And never forget that resilience is not talent, it's training. So every single time you choose not to quit, you're getting stronger, you're building a skill, you're becoming someone who simply doesn't give up no matter what. This is your moment. This is your chance. This is the beginning of your transformation if you choose to let it be. The next time you face difficulty, the next time you want to quit, the next time giving up seems reasonable and justified, remember what you learned here. Remember these principles. Remember that you're training yourself. Remember that you're building something permanent and powerful through the choice to keep going. And then make that choice, take that next step. Prove to yourself one more time that you're stronger than you think. And if you found value in these principles, if something shifted in you while listening, if you believe these truths can help someone else who's struggling, who's thinking about giving up, who needs to hear that mental strength is trainable and resilience is a skill, then please share this message. Share this audiobook. Share these principles with someone who needs them, because you never know whose life might change because you took a moment to pass along something that helped you. Hit that like button if these 10 principles resonated with you. If you're committed to training your mind and never give up. If you're ready to become someone who pushes through when others quit. Drop a comment below and tell me which principle hit you the hardest, which one you're going to apply first, what challenge you're facing that you're now committed to pushing through. Because your story matters, your struggle matters, your choice to keep going matters, and sharing it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to make their own choice to persevere. And here's something really important. If you want more content like this, more principles and strategies and truths that will help you build mental strength and achieve your goals and become the best version of yourself, then subscribe to Bit-Size Book English. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Because we're creating a community here, a community of people who refuse to give up, who are training themselves to be resilient, who understand that success is not about talent or luck, but about developing the mental strength to keep going when everyone else quits. When you subscribe to Bit-Size Book English, you're not just getting more audiobooks and summaries. You're joining a movement of people who are committed to growth, to pushing through difficulty, to becoming stronger through challenges rather than being broken by them. This channel exists to give you the tools and principles and mindset shifts you need to achieve things you currently think are impossible, to help you train your mind the same way you train your body, to provide the wisdom and strategies that successful people use, so that you can use them too and create the life you want instead of settling for the life that feels safe. So hit subscribe, join this community, commit to your own growth, and let's do this together. And remember right now, in this moment, You're at a choice point. You can close this video and go back to your life unchanged, or you can decide that today is the day you stop giving up easily. Today is the day you start training your resilience. Today is the day you become someone who keeps going when it gets tough. The challenge you're facing, the thing that's been making you want to quit, it's still there. It hasn't gotten easier just because you listen to this audiobook, but you have something now that you didn't have before. You have the knowledge that your mind is trainable, that resilience is a skill, that every choice to not quit makes you stronger, and you have these 10 principles that you can apply starting with your very next difficult moment. So what's it going to be? Are you going to listen to the voice that says it's okay to quit, or are you going to train yourself to push through? Are you going to let this challenge break you, or are you going to use it as the forge that makes you stronger? Are you going to be someone who gave up, or someone who kept going? The choice is yours. It's always been yours, and it will be yours in every difficult moment for the rest of your life. Choose wisely. Choose strength. Choose to never give up, and watch how everything in your life begins to change. Not because your circumstances got easier, but because you trained your mind to handle them better, to push through them, to become stronger because of them. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being someone who's willing to grow and learn and become more than you currently are. Now go out there and prove to yourself what you're capable of. Take that next step. Make that hard choice. Keep going when you want to quit. And remember, you're not just getting through this challenge. You're training yourself. You're building an unbreakable mind, one choice at a time. I'll see you in the next video. And until then, keep pushing, keep growing, and never, ever give up. Subscribe to Bit-Size Book English. Hit that notification bell, and let's build mental strength together. This is just the beginning of your transformation, and I can't wait to see who you become. And thank you for listening.